Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Jo. This channel is called Joey Sewy, and today I've got a video for you about my sewing life in lockdown. I haven't made a video for a little while and I'm sorry that I haven't been here. And that's what this video is about. It's about how my life is shaping up during lockdown and where sewing fits or doesn't into that. I want to say, just before we start, two things. The first is you can really help me out with something. I have a second YouTube channel called Jo Cook Yoga because one of my jobs is a yoga teacher, and at the moment I'm not doing any of that in real life. It's a very small channel because it's really only been set up as a way for me to connect with people who I would normally see in real life in my yoga classes, but at the moment obviously I can't. If you could go over there and subscribe, so I'll put the channel name down, I'll put links in the comment box, in the description box below, but if you could go over there and subscribe, if I can reach 1,000 subscribers on that channel, it will mean I can live stream my classes, and that would make a huge difference to my workflow. So if you're able to do that, that would be great. You can turn the notifications off if you don't actually want to see yoga videos. The content on there is basically yoga classes, me teaching to some extent as I would teach in real life. But obviously I would be teaching to a room full of people and I'm teaching to a camera. Second thing I just want to say before we get totally into this is that this is just my point of view. This is not a video where I tell you how to fit sewing into your life, what you should be doing with your life, what you should be feeling. So if I say anything that really goes against how you're finding lockdown, all that proves is that you're a different human being to me, which I hope you already knew. But what I mean is, you know, these are the things that I'm feeling about the way my life particularly is and the circumstances that I find myself in, which I'll be honest, I know I'm very privileged. If you're having a different experience, please don't feel that this is supposed to be judgment on you or anything like that. Occasionally I've done videos like this about my experience and people have taken it as me telling other people what to do. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just sharing how it is on Planet Jo. So let's get into this. I wanted to talk about really to fill the gap about why haven't I been here with sewing content, because I do feel a commitment to you guys. I have a channel. We went over 8,000 subscribers recently, which is brilliant, and I haven't even celebrated that with you, which I would normally want to do, and I will get to doing somehow at some time along the way. But as many people trying to live and do work and exist in lockdown, it's weird. I've never done it before. I'm working it out as I go along, and it's having various impacts on how I spend my time. So I'm going to tell you about them, and sewing does fit into that, but largely by its absence. But it has helped me to reflect on exactly what do I use sewing for and why do I sew, rather than just because I like it or I want the thing I'm sewing. It's made me go a little bit deeper than that. So practical sides of lockdown for me, I live in a house that's plenty big enough for my family, and we have a garden and we live in a quiet place. We are not in a city. Our town has fairly quiet shops that are open. So after the initial madness of everything getting locked down, and of course I'm talking about an English experience or a UK experience here, life is fairly easy to live in lockdown for us. Fairly easy. The simple things, getting food and living in this space as a family of 4 that are not leaving it, is working okay. I know I'm privileged, as I've said already. I do. And we have plenty of space. We have a garden outside that window there, and we have a bedroom each. You know, these things are working out fine, but there is much less time for me. So my husband works full time. He's not furloughed, he's simply working at home. So he's working 9 to 5, and he's often on the phone. My children are off school. I have 2 children, 12 and 9, and they're homeschooling. Who's doing the homeschooling? Well, 3 days of the week, that's me. And 2 days of the week, that's my husband, because that's how it works out that we share it. I'm still trying to do my jobs. I guess I have 3 jobs. One of them is you guys. One of them is a yoga teacher, which I mentioned at the start, and the main one in terms of time and income is a psychotherapist working with victims of domestic violence largely, and some private clients. So I am seeing clients on the telephone, but that means that for hours on end I have to lock the doors, put my headset on, and in my brain be somewhere else. So those are the days when my husband keeps the children away from me because I cannot be interrupted. But I've realised that normally I have quite a lot of time in my week, which I have created on purpose, where there isn't anyone else in the house, but I'm in the house. And those are the spaces in which I make videos. Those are also the spaces in which I think and I reflect on things. And all that space is gone. So whether the children are working, whether they're playing, they're here. And my husband's working and he's here, and I have to some extent shield him from interruptions because he does the same for me when it's my work time. So we give and take. So there just isn't the space. We have physical space, but there isn't the head space or the time space for this kind of thing at the moment. That's really what I've been struggling with. And that's where my life is on a practical level at the moment. Those of you who are finding lockdown a much quieter time with less to do, I'm a little bit envious, because my lockdown is definitely the flip side of that. I am way busier. I can't do as much as I normally can do. And I'm really just trying to hold on and hope that eventually when we get back to a normal life, some of it will still be there. There has been another practical thing which has definitely conspired against videos, and that is that the weather out there has been amazing. Spring is always a time when, if you look back on my videos, where I don't sow a lot because the garden calls, and we haven't had a drop of rain of any significance for over a month now, which is unheard of. We live in not many miles away from the rainiest place in Britain. Normally it skips us a lot of it. We're not the rainiest place right here, but the Lake District and certain parts of the Lake District that are not 10 miles from here, because of the geography and all of the science of it, gets masses of rain. There hasn't been any. It's been so dry and so warm and so sunny. I've been sunburnt more than once. And our garden is a work in progress, and so I've been doing a lot of work outside, which I have kind of pushed too hard sometimes and been exhausted and not been able to do anything other than sit down when I come in the evening. So there's another kind of brick in the wall against why I haven't been sewing. So the weather has been incredible, definitely made it easier to cope, but also been working against me even wanting to be inside and sew, never mind having the time and energy to do it. I've got hay fever, that's what all the croaking is about. Then there's other stuff that I've been trying to reflect on and trying to work out what is going on in my head. So it's all the psychological side of how lockdown is affecting me. And as I said, this is really personal. It isn't a should video. It's just a how I'm feeling video. One of the psychological mistakes I made was I promised you I would do a tutorial about the belt on the dress that I made in February. Is it really February? My special dress. And when I promise to do a particular video, if I'm not really all that motivated to do it and then I've made the promise, I get really stuck, because every video that I do that isn't that, I feel has a big neon sign on it saying, you haven't done the tutorial yet, you haven't done the tutorial yet. This is how it feels in my head. So for a few weeks, or longer than that, a little while since I made that promise, I've been feeling the weight of the promise, and it's started to hold me back. It's just the way I work. So what I've decided to do with the tutorial is I'm going to write it up and put it on my blog. I'm not going to show it on a video. I find tutorials very difficult to film. Those of you who do tutorials, or if you ever see a good tutorial, they are tough to make. So kudos to anyone who does it well, or even does it, because they take a lot of time, way more time than this kind of video takes, in the making and in the editing. So this time I'm going to sidestep that. I might come back to it If I want to make another belt, I will do my best to film it or maybe do it on a live stream. But at the moment, I only want the one I've got. So any others I'd make, I'd just be making it for the sake of it. And I don't like that kind of making. But I did take comprehensive pictures whilst I was making the first one. And I will write that up into a blog post. And that feels much more achievable for me. So that's what I'm going to do. Those of you who've been waiting for that, I am sorry. I just find it, I didn't make the promise in bad faith. I made it in good faith, but then I have to admit I don't think I'm going to get around to doing that. There is a practical thing that my sewing room is now the homeschooling space, so space to do anything there, especially to film and spread out, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I'd rather just get that tutorial written up, you can access it, and then we can move on. So the other part of lockdown for me, and where sewing does or doesn't fit into it, is about how I feel about my home and how I'm feeling about lockdown. And basically, because I am incredibly lucky that I have a safe, warm, large home, and everyone I live with is safe and I get on with them, and that is not the case for a lot of people, the work I do. It is not the case for a lot of people. It's a very dangerous time. But for me, this home is like a cocoon. And whatever else is going on out in the big wild world, which is big stuff at the moment, very anxiety provoking, even for the steadiest among us, I feel emotionally shielded from it in here. And so when my creative brain is looking for things to do, the nesting instinct kicks in, and the wanting to make my home even better and kind of look after this space is where my creative urges flow. And so for that reason, I think I showed you in my March favourites video that I'd been doing some DIY on a utility room or a laundry room. I'd been painting the floor and I'd been doing all sorts of things, and that's where that urge came from. It was all about nesting. We're living in a renovation and we've got maybe 4 more rooms to do. Quite a lot of work to do in them, but there's about 4 more rooms to do. So a lot of my creative urges are going towards the house, and also, as I said, towards the garden. And so I don't really have a lot of push at the minute to do sewing, because that's not about my nesting and it's not about my cocoon, and it doesn't feel like it's part of the keeping me safe. So it took me a long time to sort of think, well, you know, I've got some time, if I have some time. Why am I filling it with house stuff rather than sewing stuff? But I think that is what's going on for me, and probably will continue to go on for me during lockdown largely, is that my creative energies are focused on keeping me safe, and that means that I'm doing interiors projects and things. So I finished the curtains behind me. That was a little bit of sewing, but no garment sewing. So all of that thinky stuff has been me reflecting on what. So if at the moment I am struggling or not finding that I have that urge to sew or that wish to sew or that excitement about sewing, what space does sewing normally have in my world? And what's going on for me when I do have those urges? And I think what I've worked out is that sewing for me is a really quite a self-centered activity in a good way. I like sewing for myself best of all, mostly garments anyway. And I like sewing on my own terms, so I'm much more comfortable sewing when I'm not going to get interrupted or when there aren't other people around. I can do it, but if I have a choice, I like the single-minded focus on one task, and I find that rewarding. And because I haven't got the opportunity to do that at the moment, that's one of the things that's making me think, I think I might leave that project. You know, when I'm in that thing thinking, what shall I do? I think I might leave that project because I'm going to get interrupted. I'd have to clear away all the homeschool stuff. So there are different barriers in the way. I've been feeling extra tired as well, partly because of the physical work I've been doing outside. And I think emotionally, lockdown, certainly for me, is taking quite a lot out of myself. And so sewing, I find quite physical. You know, it's not running a marathon, but if I were to measure it, I reckon I spend 70% of my time sewing, standing up or moving between workstations. And that's not because I have a badly designed room, it's just because that's the way I work. Either I'm ironing or I tend to stand at a table to cut, all those things. So the only time I really sit down when I'm sewing is if I'm piecing something together, so pinning or basting, or if I'm actually sewing it. And proportionally for time, that's not a lot of time. So it's quite physically tiring. And on all these days that I've been doing lots of physical work, or I've been wrangling the children a lot every day, I just haven't got the energy to do that kind of thing. I have done quite a lot of knitting at this time. I've finished one sweater, which I'll show you in the next video or so, and I've kind of half done another sweater. The fact that it's been so warm outside, the irony doesn't escape me. But knitting for me is a restful activity. I can sit down, don't necessarily have to think too much, or if I am thinking, it's in a particular contained way, but physically my body doesn't have to do anything. I don't have to stand up, and that's so I can use knitting as a relaxation thing in a way that sewing physically isn't relaxing. For my brain, largely it is, but it isn't physically relaxing. So I think in summary, what I've found is that my sewing is like the cherry on a cake. And it's made me realise that actually the times in my life when I have sewn have generally been when I've felt like most of the rest of my life is in good order. If there's anything that isn't quite right, whether I'm moving house or a relationship changes or whatever, that hasn't been a time when I've sewn. So I don't stress sew. I don't sew to escape things. For me, I tend to sew more when I don't have anything to escape. So it is really at the top of my list of, in the sense of I have to take care of everything else and then I feel comfortable to sew. That's not that I have obligations to others, it's that that's where sewing fits into me. So if I'm doing quite a lot of sewing, it's a really good indicator that life is nice and level and calm and all going great. And it's probably why I love sewing, because it reinforces those feelings. But if life is a bit woe and a bit way, then sewing isn't where I turn. That's what I've been finding. Thank you for listening to my rambling. The next couple of videos I am going to do there might be 3 in this. So the direction is I'm trying to find sewing things that I can talk about, even if I'm not actually making garments. So number 1 is the sewing that I have been doing has been very, very, very slow. So I took 6 hours hand sewing the hem of those curtains, and I have been doing some hand sewing on the construction of a shirt. So things I could easily have done on a machine, I have been sitting and doing little back stitches. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a video. I'm also going to have a tour of my dressing room and my wardrobe. So I'll show you both how I store my clothes, but also, you know, the extent of my handmade wardrobe. I've never looked at what proportion it is, but it must be above 50%, I think. And then also I do have some, not many, and not necessarily finished, but I do have a little bit of sewing to show you, because I didn't do a what have I been sewing in March video. So I can round up what there has been in March and April and give you some sewing content from that. So I'm still here. Those of you who did get in touch and say, are you okay? Is everything all right? Thank you very much for being concerned. Everything is okay. I did forget we had, I didn't forget, but, well, I did. We did have a bereavement in our family. Someone very special to me did die about 4 weeks ago now. And the grief for that has kind of, I don't know where it's gone, because it's all been a bit weird. We weren't able to go to the funeral and that kind of thing. So it's just been a bit strange. So that's also knocked things to side. So those of you who asked, it wasn't really that stopped it. It was all of the things that have caused me to not be sewing very much and not be very present on my channel. But I am still here. I haven't gone away. There might be a little bit less than normal. We'll see. I might, you know, this might kickstart me and there might be loads. But I'm still here, and I do still appreciate your support, especially those of you who have supported me through Ko-fi, which is a a Patreon-like arrangement where you can go and give as little as £1 or as much as you like, and some of you have been so generous that you have supported me, and I really do appreciate that. So for many, many reasons, not least that I do enjoy making videos, I just have struggled to have anything to say. I will be back very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.